Welcome back to the Lou Perez Podcast. My name is Lou Perez. If you'd like to support the podcast, please head over to thelouperez.locals.com and join the Lou Perez community. If you join, you'll get to listen to the podcast early. You'll get to watch my sketch comedy early, as well as experience other exclusive content. So I hope you enjoy it. And if you're looking for another way to support me, you can do so by supporting my sponsors. So if you're into cold brew, I highly recommend Black Organic Cold Brew. Head over to www.blvckbrew.com and use promo code LOU, that's LOU, and you'll get free shipping. And if you're into CBD products, please check out Paloma Verde, www.palomaverdestore.com. And if you use the code LOU, you'll get 25% off purchases over $75. And if you sign up for email, you'll get an extra 10% off as well. All right, here we go. I am very happy to be joined by these two gentlemen. I know them as Marc, Clair, and Brian McWilliams, but you might know them as the Lions of Liberty. Guys, thank you. Thanks for coming.
What's up? Or my stripper name, Johnny Cherry.
Johnny Cherry.
Nice. Yeah, well, I've got a bald head, and sometimes I get real hot, and my head kind of gets a little red tint to it. So, the cherry, and the things I do to the ladies. Tying cherry stems in my mouth. Yeah.
This is the first time I'm actually having both you guys up on screen. I'm like, whoa, you guys are like at the opposite ends of the hair spectrum. So yeah. Brian has a very, Jason Statham thing going on, and Marc's got
not the sex appeal.
It's been a while since I've seen a guy like who would you get?
Brad Pitt in World War Z is what I'm going to go with.
Nice.
Yeah, I can see that.
The peak hair.
I think that was an underrated movie. I did enjoy that movie.
Let's not talk too much about Israel, though, because Michael Che just made a joke on Saturday Night Live that I think effectively they're trying to cancel him right now just for joking about vaccines in Israel. So, third rail.
Yeah, well,
I missed that joke. What was the joke? Was it funny at least?
Well, now you're trying to get me canceled. All right, I'll tell you what the joke was.
So I can run this place.
It was real short, and it was just, he goes, Israel says they vaccinated 50% of their population. I'm going to guess it was the Jewish half.
I mean, that's true and funny.
Yeah.
They point, I think the joke points out who really runs Hollywood, and that's Hamas. So,
but they were democratically elected. We tried to stop it, but they got in.
Well, I'm very interested to know how you guys started. How did Lions for Liberty come about? And we'll take it from there.
Well, there's so many places to start here, really. But I guess it really starts in college for both of us, because Brian and I were, believe it or not, members of the same fraternity, Phi Kappa Tau, Penn State University. So that is where we first encountered each other. But that's probably about a decade before all this political stuff came up. I first got into Ron Paul actually from another college friend named Howie, who's a part of our podcast now, and he was a congressional page, they're called, when he was in high school. He basically was like an internship for a congressman, and he didn't work. He worked for some Democratic congressman from Pennsylvania, but he ended up meeting this guy Ron Paul while he was there, and he would go to all his speeches, and he sometimes would go to his office and talk about liberty. And he told me about this guy in college, and I was like, why is this drunk guy telling me about this old congressman? I don't know what's going on here, but he talked about it enough and was excited about it enough that eventually I started reading Ron Paul's column. At the time, it was called Texas Straight Talk. And what stood out to me, especially growing up in a Republican household, is that all of his columns at the time were just criticizing Republicans. He was criticizing everything Republicans were doing: the war on drugs, the war overseas, the war on terror. And it just struck me that here's this Republican, and he's just criticizing Republicans. So that really stood out to me, because as far as I had known, Republicans criticize Democrats, Democrats criticize Republicans, and that's just the way it is. So he was the first really person to break me out of that paradigm and start to see things differently. And what I realized is it's because he's looking at things from a point of principle, from a specific point of view. And that's kind of what sent me down the path, basically, to learning about this stuff. But fast forward to 2008, and he ran for president. I got excited about it. I was a psychopath posting Ron Paul videos on on MySpace of all places, and I started to tell everybody I could encounter about him, including Brian, who was a steadfast drinking partner of mine in Los Angeles at that time.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Marc, I think you were about only maybe a year in, probably at that point, to Los Angeles when you moved out here, right?
Completely false time frame. No, I moved here in 2004, and this is like 2007.
Oh, okay. Well, it was a while later. Yeah, but exactly. Marc came out, and politics didn't come up. It didn't play a big role in our lives, and then it suddenly became, oddly enough, because of Ron Paul. I mean, he was a very inspiring figure, obviously. This guy that's telling the truth, that had Texas straight talking it right in your face, and there was that epic Giuliani moment where Ron Paul called out the war state, the fact that we're getting this blowback, and maybe there's a reason 9/11 happened. Fun fact, I was working at Hooters during 9/11. So there you go. Yes, true story.
I do remember we would often go to Hooters for wings while Brian was working, just to...
Not on 9/11, though. They didn't come in that day.
Not on 9/11. Yeah, that night, we're like, hey, everybody, wings?
So, but Marc had talked to me about Ron Paul, and we actually went door to door for Ron Paul. And that was one of the most eye-opening and frustrating experiences, because you had this guy, which we talked to, 90% Democrats, and you go door to door and most people go, you know what? I like him. I actually like what he has to say. I think he's right on most issues, but I'm not going to vote for him. And you go, okay, well, that's very aggravating. Why? And they go, well, because he won't win. And that really brought to the forefront that how the two-party system has really ingrained itself in people's brains so thoroughly. And you can see how it really owns the way people move, the way they want to feel like they're winning and voting for a team. They want to feel as though they've achieved a specific victory if their candidate wins, even though their candidate is so far removed from their daily lives. So that kicks us off into doing a whole, the Lions Liberty website. For a long time, we did articles posting on the Daily Paul. Got a lot of web traffic that way. And then foolishly, we're focusing on web traffic until Marc realized the future. Marc?
Yes. Accidentally realized the future. At some point I just found myself, this is a time in my life where I was working maybe a couple days a week out here in LA. So I had a lot of free time. And I would spend a lot of that time, no matter what I was doing, I found myself listening to podcasts. It was just a thing I really enjoyed doing. But I couldn't really find libertarian podcasts, which might seem like an insane thing right now, because you can't not find libertarian podcasts now. There's like hundreds of thousands of them. But at the time, there really wasn't many. There was like Lou Rockwell had sometimes. I think Cato had some pretty boring podcasts, but there wasn't really the kind of like interesting, fun podcast that I was looking for, or any that were out there on a consistent basis. So I decided, okay, I guess I want to hear a libertarian podcast. I want to hear a podcast every week. I want to hear an interview with somebody about how they, came into these ideas. So I guess I have to start that because it doesn't exist. So I just kind of did some fast research.
And what brought both you guys to Los Angeles to begin with? What were you?
I followed him. I chased him.
He followed me. Like it was like It Follows. We had fucked one time, and then he just kept on following me wherever I went.
I mean, is that the plot? Is that the plot to It Follows? I haven't seen
you
that.
never seen? Did I just? Well,
I'm not spoil this shit for me.
No. It comes out right in the beginning. Oh, you got to watch It Follows. It's a great movie.
The first scene lays out the whole scenario. But
yeah, it's gross and hilarious.
We just do a live watch of it now instead of whatever we're going to talk about.
Yeah, what are we doing? Well,
I know.
You've got limited time. I know where you're at recording there, Lou, but so I mean, I moved to Los Angeles because I've always wanted to be a writer. I went to English, at Penn State. I majored in English with a writing emphasis. Creativity and creative bent is kind of what I have, and so I moved here to be a writer. Realized it could be difficult, and then I got here and I was like, oh, this is impossible. It's impossible. Yeah, because it's like you have to know people.
He's going to be writing in a Hollywood script and working on a movie like 3 months in.
Exactly. You have to know people before you know people. It's ridiculous. So I got out here and I'm just kind of trying to throw my seed and throw my talent around equally, and failing on both counts. And ended up working in public relations, which is what I do now. But that actually kind of bleeds into what we've been doing lately with the podcast. Well, because we've been doing it for so long. So my show, Electric Liberty Land, is Wednesdays on culture, comedy, and politics, current events. Sometimes liberty. But a lot of it now has been focused on, because we're in this kind of culture war, because the Libertarian Party, which I was not a member of for a long time until like the last cycle, basically, was so bad at messaging and just so awful at communicating their values. And that's where, what you've been doing, Lou, is so effective. Comedy is so effective in cutting through and telling people, like, pointing out the absurdities of what's going on. And the Libertarian Party has just been atrocious at it for many reasons. So the PR aspect kind of has come into the messaging and trying to figure out what the best strategy is, what to emphasize, what not to emphasize, and trying to push it forward that way. So that's what brought me to LA and is kind of tying into what I'm doing now. So the writing, the comedy, I did stand-up comedy for, several years, and now public relations, which God willing, I won't have to do much longer.
Well, I definitely want to talk to you guys about the LP, the Libertarian Party, because I'm not a member of the LP. I've been fortunate enough to do, to speak at different conventions, to perform and all that, and I'm really, really happy to have those relationships. But so I'm kind of on the outside, and I'm looking in. And I have no idea what's going on with the warring between the personalities, libertarian personalities. And you guys have done like a really good job, like in particular, Marc, like bringing together these warring factions and having them debate and have it out. What's going on? Because I think for a lot of people, if all you know really is like Republicans and Democrats, you look at the Libertarian Party kind of like, oh, those are the kids who play Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm a jock and I don't really know what those rules are, and it's kind of weird. And they're really upset about.
It's a pretty good analogy.
They're really upset about something.
I'm like a nerd to you. Check out these pythons, bro.
That is the perception, I think, of a lot of people in mainstream politics. Like the libertarians are just these weird kids doing their own thing in their mom's basement, and who knows what it's really all about.
Yeah. So what is going on? I know like one of the probably like the biggest stuff has to do with like the Mises Caucus, and maybe you could explain what that is in particular. And
sure, let's see where to even start. The Mises Caucus is basically the Libertarian Party has like 1 million caucuses. They're basically just groups within the party that have a certain, whether it's a bent to the ideology or a certain thing they want to emphasize or a certain strategy about them. And these groups just kind of form for the purposes of organizing within the larger organization, basically. But the Mises Caucus was founded, I would say, in many ways a direct response to the Gary Johnson, and more specifically Bill Weld portion of the Gary Johnson-Bill Weld campaign. It was founded by a guy named Michael Heiss, but his idea was really at the core to put out messaging much more similar to that of Ron Paul, much more similar to what he and others would claim to be a more hardcore, pure libertarian message. Because if you're going to have a smaller party like this, there's the pragmatics that I'd say were probably more the opposition to the Mises types, who really want to focus on, the mechanics of winning elections, this and that, which I guess if you're a political party, that's part of what you have to do. But I think the focus of the Mises Caucus is really just on messaging and getting the messaging down and and emphasizing the most important things, which they and I would agree largely that the important things for libertarians to emphasize would be foreign policy, monetary policy with the Federal Reserve, the war on drugs. Those would be the primary three things. And
private property rights is a big one as well.
Yeah, and because there was also a pushback. There was also a little bit of a socialist movement trying to get into the party about 4 years ago. That has basically died out almost altogether, I think, largely because of the existence of the Mises Caucus. So, that's the idea behind it, but it has faced resistance largely and possibly due to the fact that they also use language. They like to use the word takeover in referring to the party, and that has rubbed many people the wrong way. Many people have been around the party for 10, 15, 20 years, don't like the idea of being quote unquote taken over, which I guess you can understand at some point. But really what they want to do is take over the messaging and get the messaging on track to what a libertarian message should be. And I think many people would agree, even those that aren't necessarily supporters of the Mises Caucus would agree that the messaging of Gary Johnson and Bill Weld, it was basically Democrat light at best at most times, sometimes Republican light, but never really truly a libertarian message.
When Johnson and Weld were running, I was a part of a comedy tour. I think it was probably called the Liberty Tour, because every fucking thing, everything libertarian, we got to have liberty in there. And we were touring around doing small comedy shows to try to get Gary Johnson onto the debate stage. And then when that portion finished and he wasn't invited to any debates, I ended up.
Great job, jerks.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Well done.
I ended up
knocked it out of the ballpark.
I know my stand-up bits really, really moved the needle on that. And so after that, I performed at the final stop on his campaign tour, which is in San Diego. And I think,
oh, nice.
I think it may have been the House of Blues in San Diego. I'm trying to think about it. And at that time, I was living in New York, and I had flown over to San Diego to perform. And one of my opening jokes was, I'm so happy to be here. Just so you guys know, I have to leave early right after my set because I have to catch a flight to go back to New York so I can vote for Gary Johnson tomorrow. And people, we're cheering. And I said, because we know if I don't vote for him, there's no way he's winning New York. And it was a fun, get together. It is what it was. But the dude didn't show up. Gary Johnson.
Are you fucking serious? To his own event.
To his own event. I don't know if maybe he made an appearance at some point in the evening, or maybe he
probably smoked too much pot and forgot.
Yeah, maybe. But it was one of those things where it's like, what are we doing here? Like what's going on here? And
yeah. Well, it's funny. I was talking coincidentally. I got a call. I was talking to Michael, who's heading up the Mises Caucus today. We're talking about the different caucus, and like Marc said, messaging is a big thing, and I think that's kind of indicative of the problem with a lot of candidates with the Libertarian Party, and that's where what we're trying to do. And we're not outwardly Mises Caucus guys, but we're talking frankly here. But
yeah,
candidate selection is important, and the Libertarian Party has fallen into this habit of kind of falling back on whatever guy comes our way that happens to have some name recognition. Like Gary Johnson, nice guy. I voted for him. I thought he was a nice guy. I thought that he was not exactly the best flag bearer because he was not that articulate. He was not great at really expressing the message like a Ron Paul. A Ron Paul, he really could nail it. Maybe he'd bore people a little bit if he got it too deep in the weeds. That was his problem. But Gary Johnson just wasn't that guy. He wasn't lighting a fire under anybody's ass. And then Bill Weld was just awful. Bill Weld, who was hawking for Hillary Clinton while he's still running with Gary Johnson, problematic. But that's the thing.
The lost story in that whole thing. Everyone says, he endorsed Hillary. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. He didn't quite use those words. But the lost story in that is that on that appearance where he was talking about Hillary Clinton, he didn't even mention the Libertarian Party. He didn't even mention that he by the way, where you might want to vote for me and Gary Johnson. No, it was just defending Hillary Clinton. So I don't care if he endorsed her or didn't. He didn't even talk about the thing he's supposed to actually be there running for.
Why do you think Bill Weld in particular, wanted to go down that route? Because I remember we're in a small world. So I've done events where Bill Weld has spoken. I remember I came back from DC after doing an event. I think it was like Students for Liberty coming back. Bill Weld was on the same train, and there's something where I'm just like here's a guy, both
Snake's on a plane, Weld's on a train.
But both of these guys were, two-term governors, which is a pretty great accomplishment, if you compare that to a lot of things, especially in politics. And it's like, why are you going this route? If you're not going to go all the way,
it just seems like it's the low bar to jump over, right? And that's the problem. We were talking about libertarians having this concept of, these are the guys that play Dungeons and Dragons in the basement. A lot of libertarians have that concept. I mean, a lot of what we try to do at Lions of Liberty and a lot of the people we've seen come into the movement, Lou, you're a great example of, look, we're outgoing, we're funny, we're likable, we're not the epitome of the libertarian as is the stereotype. But I think there is a very large portion of the populace that is that stereotype. And when you have somebody, right, when you have a Gary Johnson or a Bill Weld come over and they've been two-term governors, right? It's like, the pretty girl wants to dance with us for the first time ever. So they bend over and they spread their legs, and then that's what happens. And these guys know that the Libertarian Party, especially the Pragmatic Caucus, who just says, we just want to get, 3% of the vote. We just want somebody that's going to appeal to whoever's not happy with the ruling class elites that are put forward by either party. They will gladly welcome them in, get that pretty girl in, and they know that. So Gary Johnson, Bill Weld, whoever, you had a few other people try to get into the party. What was it, Mark? Do you remember the one guy that was trying to worm his way in? Older senator. He's like a former senator.
Slobodan Milosevic.
That was him.
You're talking about Lincoln Chafee.
Lincoln Chafee. Look,
I interviewed him. He was a nice guy.
He's a perfectly nice guy. He's not
That's where
a libertarian. Yeah. He's not a libertarian. But he the same thing. He goes, well, these sluts will fuck me. So why don't I go with that?
But they didn't. Believe it or not, they didn't. I couldn't believe it. There was a time I thought, he's going to be the nominee. This is it. The next establishment guy is going to come in. And I think that's a positive sign that even though Joe Jorgensen wasn't the most inspiring candidate, to say the least, considering where we had come from the previous candidates, considering before that we had Johnson Weld, we had Johnson before that, and we had Bob Barr before that, she is the most libertarian presidential candidate in the last 20 years, and that's not really
but
close.
Yet had some of the shittiest, most woke garbage messaging. I mean, Mark and I both were railing about this on our respective shows. I mean, on the one, I was pointing out the one, Black Lives Matter, of course, was a huge cultural happening. And I remember when it happened, the Libertarian Party basically came out and was like, we have to be actively anti-racist, something that is at its core very anti-libertarian, because to be actively how can you be actively anti-racist? Those who are trying to force people into something. And another thing that really just drove me insane was Kamala Harris enters the race, right, as VP. And Joe Jorgensen, a woman running for president, puts out this messaging saying, hey, welcome. It's great to have another woman in the race as VP. Now, let's look at this empirically. Who are you trying to reach with that message? People that want to vote for a woman? Okay, well, if they're going to vote for a woman and they want to see a woman get in power, are they going to vote for you, third-party candidate nobody gives a flying fuck about? Or are they going to vote for Kamala Harris running on the Democratic ticket with Joe Biden, who was vice president to Barack Obama? Right. Tell me which way. Am I crazy?
I think my favorite awkward Joe Jorgensen moment is when she asked Dave Rubin if she would vote for him on a live show he was doing, and he just there's this awkward moment, and I think there's a video of it with the Curb Your Enthusiasm music over it. But he's like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna.
And oddly enough, sorry, let me just tell us real quick, Lou. Oddly enough, so I had this panel with Dave Rubin, Dave Smith from Part of the Problem, and Eric Brakey, who's a former state senator from Maine, and Dave Smith said, Dave Rubin, will you vote for me? And Dave Rubin said, yes, 100%. Dave Rubin would vote for the comedian, the anarchist comedian, over Joe Jorgensen, no problem.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where you bring up Dave Smith, and I mean over the past year for sure. I mean, I think Dave has really been on point with messaging. Like he's, obviously he's a very popular guy, very talented. He has followers. He's making noise, and it's so odd to see so many people. And I've met Dave, and I always had a good experience with him, and I like Dave. And it's like, man, why are all the libertarians coming after the people that I like, and that also have like what I think really great messaging? And so for me, it's almost like can I be in this party? I don't know. I'm like,
because he was nice to Nick Fuentes once. So that's
well. Now that the opening's there, I'll text you after the show, Lou, about. We'll see. Maybe we'll talk a little more. But no, exactly, man. It's like, and the Tom Woodses of the world, right? Tom Woods, great, the nicest guy in the world. We got him to curse on a show of ours one time, and that was like the biggest deal ever.
My 500th episode features a Tom Woods F-bomb. Check it out. Lions Liberty 500.
So, but the sweetest people, the most outgoing people, the people that are most welcoming everybody into the tent, to your point, they're getting attacked and ripped online from these people that are on this kind of left pragmatic side, and over just nonsense, saying that that they're anti, I don't know, that they're racist, that they're somehow alt-right, which is, and again, an all-encompassing phrase that means nothing. It's just a slur like anything. And it honestly, it's sickening to see people that are interested in freedom and liberty, at least on the surface, adopt the left's wording, adopt these phrases that we all know mean nothing and are just simply designed specifically to lambaste somebody you don't agree with. But to your greater point, I don't know why. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and I've been seeing things recently about like Ron Paul coming back up, and not like, oh, you remember how Ron Paul, stood up to Giuliani. You remember how Ron Paul was consistent on, being against the war on drugs. It's Ron Paul bad guy, and I'm like, in what sense is he a bad guy? Now, maybe you guys could explain to me. I know there was some controversy with articles that newsletters and that's which I've never read his newsletters. I think they were probably before my time.
You had to literally, the only way to read those newsletters is literally to have scanned photocopies of them, and I'm not making that up. They're so old that they are literally written mailed newsletters, and which he did not personally write. So they were basically, and you could argue, he should have had better oversight. He hired people to write these and ghostwrite them. They got put out under his name. That's the argument you could make. But at the same time,
you can also make the argument there weren't really racist newsletters. Like
I would agree.
There's a couple words in there but if you actually Justin Armando, may he rest in peace, wrote an entire article breaking down the racism in the newsletters. And if you're looking for racism, sure. But if you're a normal human being, and yeah, it's a little off color for the not to be off color, but for the 90s, but it's kind of just how conservatives talked in the 90s. That does not make it right, no, but it's not like this blatant outright racism as it is often portrayed.
And I think it's sort of a testament to the times that we're living in too, where what becomes most important is these newsletters as opposed to the policies that this person supported and was pushing. And a little while ago, I tweeted out a poll asking, what would you prefer? Would you prefer an anti-racist warmonger or a racist anti-war activist? And
a lot of people in the Libertarian Party would choose the latter.
Yeah. And it's one of those things like what really, let's talk about what's really important, what's going to have the most impact, the biggest impact on, millions of lives, not only here in the country, but also around the world. And, let's let's cut out the bullshit. I don't know.
Yeah.
And what's more racist than bombing a bunch of brown people at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, literally. When you look at the broader, we're talking about what's the broader body of work. With Ron Paul, there's a broad body of work with the exception of these very few things that you can clearly point to. But you hit it right on the head in that our culture right now is so focused on it's broken down and not into a really even a moral ideology. It's broken down to these super psychotic, ultra-focused echo chamber ideologies wherein if anybody disagrees with you on anything, that's grounds to destroy them. And it doesn't matter if you take something out of context. Half the stuff you see people canceled for isn't even, a Ron Paul newsletter. It's something so inconsequential, pulled out of context in the broader context of a conversation that they use to demonize you and poison you and attack you and demonize you, even though you might agree with them on 80%, and like you're saying, you could be an anti-war, what's oh God, I'm blanking on her name. Ali. There's I think she's Nigerian or Somali. I think she's Somali.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali.
Yes, Ayaan Hirsi Ali. The left has demonized this woman who is a survivor. She's fighting for freedom. She's fighting for equality. She's fighting for people to stop genitally mutilating women in her home country. And the left has made her into a no-no word. This woman who I guarantee they agree with on 85% of things, but for some reason she crossed some third rail and now they have to demonize her. It is legitimately a sickness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's one of these things too, where I'm so used to, and I think we're so used to seeing charges of racism, charges of sexism and all that, and seeing how that's been used, over the past, 5 years or so, where now when I see it against people who, for the most part are pushing a a libertarian, ethos or philosophy, I'm more reluctant to be like, hold on, I can't jump on that bandwagon. Like if you want me to join a lynch mob, you have to show me more evidence than rope. I mean, that's just how it is. And I've had figures like Maj Touré. I had him on when I was with We the Internet.
He's the white supremacist too. Did you know that?
Yeah.
I got that's how it works now. I wish I was joking. I really do. I know. That's the funny thing. I've actually seen that accusation.
Jesus. Well, with Maj, I know Maj has been very vocal about masks, and he's not. He's called COVID a hoax. I disagree with him on that. I disagree with him on mask stuff, the hoax stuff, whatever. What's so important to me is that Maj is doing so much great work spreading the idea of you have a Second Amendment right. People in urban communities, your rights are being violated when the government is saying that you can't arm and defend yourself. And not only is he saying arm and defend yourself, he's training people how to safely carry, how to safely handle firearms. And he's also, from what I know from doing the show, he's also a pretty upstanding dude when it comes to the relationships that I know. He's a dude that people can look up to and say, oh, you know what? I don't have to agree with him on everything, but man, this guy is really making an impact. And let's see how we can work together and move things forward.
He told a donor to suck his dick. So,
yeah. Well, that's the thing is that's what's lost in society. Now we're getting real philosophical.
He said to suck a dick, not his dick specifically, I believe.
Well, everybody's told somebody to suck a dick.
And that's also the point.
It's a cultural. Also it's a cultural thing too, because I've been seeing the stuff where if you come at me, depending on where I'm from, there's a way of I don't know if it was it him and Nicholas Sarwark, I think, had had a beef going. And I don't know, I've never met Nick. I don't,
we have in several occasions, and once hilariously when he was dolled up in full makeup at Pork Fest one time.
Oh wow!
And I may have been under the influence of some sort of fungus.
We may have all been under the influence of some sort of fungus. Not Nick, by the way.
He came up and talked to me. I've talked to him before. He's actually a nice enough guy in person, but he came up to me at one point in this makeup at Pork Fest, and I was like, I can't handle it right now. He's like, oh, are you on? I was like, yeah. He's like, I understand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess in a way that kind of talks about what we're referencing in a wider spectrum. Look, Nick Sarwark, former chair, who those who don't know, he was the former chair of the Libertarian Party. Mm-hmm. So he is a fucking asshole online, and he honestly is an asshole in a lot of meetings. And I don't agree with his messaging. I don't agree with a lot of what he has to say. But if you get down and you talk to him one-on-one, you can have a conversation. Maj Touré, you say you don't agree with him on the mask, but you see beyond that, and you can have a conversation with the guy. And because you disagree on two things, obviously, you get along with him on everything else, and that's what really should matter. But we've lost that ability.
Mm-hmm. And also, there's a way that I talk to people that I am. I don't know, especially if I feel like I'm with friends or with allies. I'm going to talk to them differently. I'm going to give them, give them the benefit of the doubt. And I saw that stuff with Dave Smith, where I'm like, here you have people in the LP giving the benefit of the doubt or going into a conversation in good faith with members of BLM and not doing the same thing with Dave Smith. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, at least, fathom, the idea of, Dave Smith is not only a commentator, he's a comedian and an entertainer, that the conversations that he's having on his podcast, there's a mixture of entertainment, of comedy, of insight and all that. And, controversy, he enjoys controversy. He's willing to go, to go there. There's something there. There's a lot of good stuff happening there, and to just try to close the door on this guy, but yet I don't know. It as like I said, like sort of as an outsider, I'm like, what the fuck is what's going on here?
And Dave's biggest critics, ultimately, when you really get to know them a little bit and see what the kind of people they are online and the kind of things they say, it comes down to this: they are humorless people. They are completely humorless people and can't comprehend edgy humor that goes outside the box. They can't comprehend any kind of humor, really, any kind of anything that goes out of the mainstream narrative of what is safe and respectable, which Dave does all the time because he's actually a funny comedian. And that's what comedy is. It's supposed to snap you out of your norms. It's supposed to shock you a bit. And that's the kind of humor Dave does in his own stand-up. It's the kind of humor he does with Legion of Skanks. And of course that bleeds into what he does on Part of the Problem. But now it's so ridiculous that if he has someone on like Nick Fuentes, who has made jokes about the Holocaust, yes, but now because Dave had that person on and didn't spend the entire hour and a half berating him about that joke, that means Dave, the Jewish Dave Smith, is an anti-Semite to these humorless people.
Yeah, I have a joke where I say the problem the libertarians have with the Holocaust is that it was carried out by the state and not the free market. Come at me. All
right, look. While we're doing Holocaust-related jokes, can I tell you mine? One of my most popular.
While we're getting canceled, we may as well.
While we're getting canceled, let's do it. So I have a joke I used to tell a lot when I was doing stand-up, and I said I have an idea. I'm a businessman. I'm a libertarian, an entrepreneur, a free market guy. So I have this idea to have a kosher hot dog stand called Ann's Franks. And, nothing big, just a little hole in the wall. Nothing special. We have one special. It's called the Attic Dog. It's just a regular hot dog, but you have to eat it very quietly. So anyway, there's that joke.
You hear that, Prags? Brian's the anti-Semite. He's got the shaved head and he's not
I want everyone to notice that we stopped the show and put the spotlight on Brian so Brian could deliver the Ayaan Franks.
Thank you. Look, that joke. I shit you not though. That joke. Every time I've told it in front of a crowd, it's always done well.
No, I know it's tough telling that, but I think you guys hit on something where, it seems like for the most part the libertarians I get along with most are the ones who are humorous. Who actually have a sense of humor. Who and in particular lately it's been anarchists. I'm like, shit, all my fucking ANCAP friends, like, thank you guys for being the sane ones during during all this shit. I've been enjoying people like Pete Quinones and and cats like that. And I guess
do you think there's something to that though, right? See, I think you hit on something that might kind of be a key to
not a coincidence.
Not a coincidence. Because we're talking like the Mises Caucus tends to have a lot more ANCAPs. It's more, again, it's more very core to the message of libertarianism, more the Rothbardian. But I think that's not
like, I mean, the candidate that they ran for presidential nomination in 2020, Jacob Hornberger, he's not an ANCAP. He's a minarchist. He states he's a minarchist. So
true.
What they care about is the big issues, and if you're on board with those issues, then they're on board with you.
Well, hold on, I'm not trying to just suck a Mises Caucus dick. Hold on, so broader perspective to what Lou was talking about. But I think ANCAPs. Here's the reason: is because when you look at ANCAP and the way when you accept that mindset, right? Of okay, anarcho-capitalist. For those who don't know, it's kind of like it's no rulers. That's what anarchy means, and it's been adopted and poisoned, but that's what it means. And capitalist, so free market, no rulers. That I think if you accept that worldview and you think about it, the people that understand it, that wrap their heads around it, are pretty much like, what the fuck ever, man. Like, you accept there's a certain amount of risk in the world. There's a certain amount of anarchy that's inherent in everything we do. And that is comedy. You have to have a sense of humor about it because look, shit cannot go your way. You can do everything right. That's why, statist planets, you can plan out everything for the state to do this, that, and the other. It's not going to go right. So I think people did accept that worldview and they said, look, I can use a little bit of anarchy. I don't want rulers. I don't want people telling me what to do because I want to own myself. I want to think for myself. Those people probably have a better sense of humor and a better grasp on what comedy is, what the world is, and can appreciate when you walk down the street and you bend over to pick up a $5 bill and you're like, hey, a crisp $5 bill. And then you take another step forward and you fall in a manhole. That's fucking life, man. It's funny. It's ironic. That's the real world. It's not this fucking, picture that everybody's painting.
That's it.
Boom, mic drop. I just ended the episode.
Well, maybe we could talk a little bit about, you guys being in California and Under normal circumstances, Brian pulled all of his hair out of his head just dealing with with California.
I burned it off in traffic, man. This fucking rage, fury burned all the hair off the top of my head.
But how's it been? The past, we're over a year now. How are you guys holding up? What are what hopes do you have? How do you see things going? And talk about that.
Well, Marc ran away to Mexico. Met a floozy, married her.
That's the short version, but all true. No, I'm in LA now. I did spend 3 months in Mexico over the summer when I was on furlough from my job. But no, I this state already had shitty politics for a libertarian, and this city specifically. But it was just, I always looked at it as kind of one of the prices I pay to live in a cool place and to live in a place with awesome weather and where I have a lot of friends and where I can go get dinner of any kind I want at any night. But that stuff is just been sucked out. I mean, the life has been sucked out of here by the lockdowns. But to me, it's more so, even when these lockdowns are starting to be lifted, they just announced they're going to start even letting Disney World open up back in April. Woo. It's the culture that is bothering me now more than anything else, because the culture has become, not to knock whatever your stance may be on masks, but when I walk my dogs without a mask on alone, I don't believe I should wear a mask.
Oh no, I'm 100% with you there. Right. I'm for wearing a mask, like,
sure,
if I'm going to be indoors with an elderly person, and
I mean, I would as well.
That sort of sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because you're a regular, reasonable person.
Right.
But here, like, you're looked at like a psychopath. Like, you're the psychopath if you're not wearing a mask outdoors. I mean,
right.
I went hiking the other week, and it's kind of funny now. It's like I can identify who the enemy is, sort of, not to make it about enemies and whatever, but it kind of feels that way. Like, when everyone on the trail has a mask, I mean, you're brainwashed. You're not someone I'm gonna be able to communicate with, especially when you're looking at me like I'm about to kill you by my act of not wearing a mask. And then once in a while, you'll see a fellow traveler with no mask on, and you're like, finally.
Oh, you do an odd.
Normal
you do
person,
a little. I walk by the beach. So Marc's fairly close to me. There's a beach strand walk I used to love to do with my dogs. Now I do it fairly less often, but right by the beach was great. You walk down, I'd hot girls. Hey, I wouldn't say that because I'm married, but I think it. So I intentionally, even though I could get a ticket from it, and I'll bring a mask to throw on if there's a cop I see, but I intentionally walk down there without a mask on just to tell people, look, this is ridiculous. Like, and that's the thing is, like, if everybody's complying, then we're never going to get out of this. We're always going to, like, Fauci's like, we may not go back to normal until 2022. Okay, really?
They're also saying, well, we should probably wear masks every flu season just because that seems to be better.
Yeah, but no,
masks kill the flu somehow. Yeah.
Insane. Yeah.
So you can get ticketed?
In
yes.
certain in Santa Monica you can, in Manhattan Beach you can, just for not having a mask on outside in general. Yeah.
Wow.
They will ticket you for not having a mask on, but that's the point. But I intentionally go there to flaunt that, not flout. Flautas, delicious. To flaunt that, but like Marc said, you walk down the street, and you see somebody else without a mask, and it's like, thank you, friend, for not being an idiot.
They will walk across the street, basically running away from me when they see me approaching without a mask.
Well,
I'm gonna just walk by them and give them COVID, and they're gonna die in the street.
Dude, I can't tell you the amount of times, because I'm in Brooklyn, and when we're outside and we're walking, we don't wear a mask because we're outside. We are outside, and you know what? Air is really good, especially when you've been cooped up in a fucking apartment, for most of the day. We have a baby, and the amount of times where I wish people would just cross the street. That's fine. This one dude, he was all the way at the end of the block. We're walking. He crosses the street and then comes back in the middle of the street and says, "Why don't you show some respect?" So
it's about respect, not about health. Oh, okay.
Exactly. At no point was this guy within 15 feet of us.
Lou, I hope you threw your baby to him when he catches the baby, you punch him in the stomach.
The old gypsy trick, huh? but it's one of those things where it's getting to the point where there's no rational conversation that you could have. I saw a couple of people on Twitter who, according to their bios, they worked in the medical field and they've been vaccinated. Right. Mm-hmm. And they say, I've been vaccinated, but I still wear my mask outside. So other people are not afraid. Right. So other people aren't afraid. And that's like, but wait a minute. They shouldn't be afraid.
Exactly.
You're missing an opportunity to even have a conversation and just say, oh, no, actually, just so you know, what we're doing here is okay.
We're vaccinated. We are vaccinated. Don't be afraid. Well, that's the thing is it's like anything based on fear. I mean, everything.
I'm just going to tell people I'm vaccinated. Because I am, because I'm not afraid. That's a vaccine to me.
Yeah. Well, it's like anything. Everything the government does is based on fear on some level, right?
Right.
The way the state operates is they get control based upon, fear of what if I lose my job? Fear of what if I can't take care of my kid? Fear of what if I can't take care of my health? Fear of what if I can't, again, with the mask thing, what if this plague is going to spread? Fear of what if terrorists come bomb me? And what have they done with it? It's turned this tiny government into this massive overarching super spreader government. We talk about super spreaders. Our government is a fucking super spreader. It is this event is the super spreader for our government. That is what it is. And it's sickening to me because, to your point, you should be going out there if you got vaccinated saying, you don't need to wear a mask. Let's normalize this shit. And the fact that it goes back to all these psychopaths that fetishized the virtue signaling and accepting the lockdowns, right? It's like a state of mind. At this point, we've reached a point, right? A year into this, we've seen 50% of restaurants shut down, 50% of small businesses shut down. We're seeing people's lives destroyed. The people that supported this from the get-go are to make a poker reference, they are pot committed. They cannot say, oh, you're right, this logically makes no sense, because that would make them bad people for destroying these people's lives and for shaming people and going along with this shit from the get-go. Mm-hmm. They are so committed now that they will go to the ends of the earth. Whatever Fauci says, they will accept. It doesn't matter what scientific evidence is to the contrary, because they will be bad people. They will. It's like, let's use everybody's favorite example, the Nazis, right? If you're a Jew, or if you're not a Jew, if you're a German and you're a Nazi in the Nazi party, and all this scientific data comes out that the Jews are the best people, the healthiest, the best for society,
which is true.
And you're like, well, we killed 6 million of them.
Can't go back.
I can't go back now because that makes me a real shitty person. You have to fucking push through. That's what all of these people are. That's what half of America or more is doing. They're pushing through because if they dare to admit they were wrong, that makes them bad people, and they know it because they've destroyed people's lives.
I think our best hope is that it will go away, because it will go away. It is going away. It wasn't even here as much as they tried to act like it was here. But is that they'll just accept that it was the vaccine, and they'll cheer that Joe Biden got us the vaccine in time and let us move on with their lives. But I don't really feel like that's really going to happen either. But
I do wonder too. So I have a son. He's going to be 1 at the end of March.
All right, congrats, bud.
And
my daughter just turned 1 a month ago. That's awesome.
That's awesome. It could be a future Liberty couple in the works.
Little arranged marriage.
Hey, I don't know. I did take the worst picture.
We're bringing in Hotep Jesus is coming into the Libertarian Party. We should. He's in favor of arranged marriages, so maybe.
I like it. Well, I'm worried about matching my kid up with Lou's kid, because I took a picture of him. He did a comedy show in LA. I came to, and I took a selfie of the two of us, and it has to be the worst picture ever taken of Lou in the history of his life. He looks like a swamp monster. It's fucking
did I look like a greasy fucking used car salesman.
It's like the way, and it's the angle of it. It was like the lighting was horrible. It looks like you have some sort of immune deficiency disease. It's great.
But I've had quite a few people, ask me, are you hopeful for the future? And the way that I look at it is I have no choice, man. I gotta be hopeful. And if you don't have hope, you got to create your own hope. I'm a fucking father, man. I have, and I actually have another one. We have another one coming, on the way. It was so much fun making the first guy.
Look at that. These these goddamn Hispanics, they pump out the kids.
He's like, dude, the fact that I made it,
Latin sons of bitches.
I made it out of high school without getting a chick pregnant is pretty fucking amazing. But
well, that you know of.
Yeah, that I know. But it's one of these things where I'm dealing with people who are, some of them are parents, and they're fucking doom and gloom. There was a recent thing, on Facebook, every now and then, like somebody I don't remember or like I haven't heard from in 5 years will post something. And this guy is a father and was talking about how he's worried about, every night he's worried about his kids dying in a climate related weather event. And like he's so afraid of that. And then I shared with him an article just about, over the past 50 years, like climate related weather deaths, like from hurricanes, from drought, are down like 90%. That's amazing. That's something to be really thankful about. And then he shared with me a CNN article about how there's going to be in excess of 250,000 deaths. And it's like, but what are you going to do about it, man? What the fuck can you do, man? You got to,
dude. So I was on, actually, coincidentally, I was on a panel with your former pal out here, Toby.
Oh, Toby.
Toby Marciano.
Toby Marciano.
I said it wrong every time. I even had him on the show. I said it wrong. I was on his show.
It's a mark of honor to have your name mispronounced by Williams. So.
So I was on this, like he was hosting these panel shows. There was stand-up comedy, right? And then you do the panel. And so I'm on there. It's it's me and Toby and JC. God, I'm blanking her name. Another stand-up comedian who's become very involved in the climate movement and a climate scientist and all this other shit. So it's basically a stacked deck against me. But the point I made to these people, I'm like, you guys are all doom and gloom and how the world's going to end. Like you just said, Lou.
Real fun at parties.
The lowest number of climate related deaths. Why? It's human ingenuity, man. Figuring out solutions to this. If you really thought climate change was that big of an issue, if this was honestly a real life-altering, life-threatening problem, we would figure it out. All of our resources would be pouring into solving that, not only because it's the future of the human race, but because financially, that would be where the money flows. We're free market people. If the future is fucking finding ways to cap climate, to recapture carbon from the atmosphere and change climate change, that's what I'm investing in. And that's where everybody's money is going to. The fact that that's not happening tells me everything I need to know, period. The climate's not a problem. The future is bright. I'm white-pilled on this matter. And I think that everything that's been happening this past year, the next generation coming up that's been sitting in their houses, that's had a fucking year of their lives taken away from them, they are not going to go along with this shit ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
They're going to rage
fucking
against that shit.
Again. They are going to be, they're going to rage against the goddamn machine, man. They're going to come out. They're going to be, these fucking assholes just created a generation of libertarians. I'm telling you.
Let's hope. I don't know if I'm as white-pilled as you on that.
I'm feeling more confident about it by the day, buddy. I'm telling you.
I'm worried about the kids that are like the literal toddlers that are growing up in mask world, that are growing up afraid to have their masks off because they don't think they're safe with masks.
Well,
on.
when I say next generation,
look at me without one on.
Yeah. That's one of the hardest things walking around the neighborhood. Hey, it's one thing, I'm walking by adults who have their masks on. You have your fucking 3-year-old kid outside with a mask on like that. Man, that's really, really tough to.
I was out walking the other month, and there was, two families kind of like biking together. It seemed like they were just people that knew each other, but they all had masks on. And then at one point, they got off the masks, they got off the bikes, and like these two kids were trying to play, and the parents were like, "No, you can't play with each other. You can't." It's just like it's so unnatural. And this is for kids who are basically can't be harmed by this at all. I mean, it's just crazy.
Well, my toddler is your son in daycare? Do you put him in daycare?
No, we're just he's with the two of us all the time.
Awful. Well, he's going to be growing up to be a terrible child, clearly. No, so my kid, fortunately, we have a daycare that's open, right? My daughter Logan's about 1 year, 2 months. I don't know. I don't do the fucking months counting thing. That's for idiots. So 1 year, 2 months. But she goes to daycare. They don't wear masks. Like the teachers have masks on, which is upsetting. But at least the kids don't have masks on. They're running around. They're interacting. They're drooling. You know, again, I'm sick right now because my daughter came home with
because you didn't wear your mask.
Yeah, but good. I'm like, good. In a way, good. I'm glad she's getting sick. I'm glad they're talking about right now how
that's going to be that's going to be isolated audio for to cancel. Libertarian podcaster is glad his daughter is sick.
Podcaster calls for his daughter to die. So, but that's the thing. It's like I just read an article, and this is the science I believe. We're wearing masks around everywhere. We're staying in our houses. We are now setting ourselves up for a real pandemic. Not one that has a 99.8 survival rate. Our immune systems are going to be shot from not dealing with the outside world, for adapting to these viruses. That's my concern. So I want my daughter to go out and get sick. I go out and I push her in dog shit. I push her like a wheelbarrow, to get her all dolled up, get that immune system pushed up. But I mean, that's a real worry. Not COVID, not wearing a mask everywhere you go. And not the flu disappearing, which everybody clearly has the flu and they're marketing as COVID.
Have I been sick? I'm wondering if I'm trying to remember the last time that I've been sick. I've been.
If your kid was in daycare, trust me, you would have been sick 7 times because they are carriers of disease.
Jeez, that's pretty.
But I bet you haven't, because I mean, you haven't. If you're going outside, right? You haven't interacted. Nobody's like.
That's why I don't send my wife to daycare. I don't want her bringing anything home.
I keep her chained up in the bathroom where she belongs.
So before we go, guys, what are some hopes for the future? Say like how are we gonna, we're in March. It's March right now. We're closing out the year. What would you like to see happen? Before the year's out.
Before the year's out.
I have one, Mark. I'd
like to see the absolute end of lockdowns as even a conversation. That's what I'd like to see. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think there are certain states, like it's hard for me to believe that Florida will ever lock down again because they only locked down for 2 weeks. The governor said we're not going to do this again. Obviously, that can change if the politics change. But I just can't imagine the people of Florida and the people that are now moving to Florida in droves accepting that when they were just not locked down this whole time and had better numbers than California that locked the entire freaking state down. So I have glimmers of hope that there are at least areas of the country and of the world that will reject this narrative entirely. And that's the kind of place I want to live. So hopefully there will at least be areas of hope, geographic areas of hope. People can build their own communities. I think the overall direction, the overarching direction of the greater narratives of the government and where things are going, not very good. We're $30 trillion in debt almost. That's going to be 40 by the end of next year at the rate that they're producing printing money. I think stimulus is going to become a regular word in the political dialogue. It's going to be every 3 months. It's time for a stimulus. And this is unsustainable. So I think for the actual future of the United States as a country, I'm not very optimistic, but I am optimistic of the future for pockets of freedom.
See, I'll go the opposite way. I'm more optimistic than Mark. I think that.
Well, you have to be because you're stuck here.
Well, yeah, but here's the. I think that, like I was saying earlier, I think that things have been overplayed. I think that the government overplayed its hand. I think that big tech has overplayed its hand. I think that we're in for a revolution as far as people's understanding of how big tech influences our lives, what they control and don't, because we're seeing as COVID gets exposed as the fucking hoax it is. And I'm not saying that COVID doesn't exist. I'm not saying it's not a virus. I'm not saying it wasn't contagious, but we were lied to. We were lied to. We were locked down. We were shut out of our lives. People's lives were ruined over a disease, the 98.8% survival rate for the majority of the population. As we see this come out, as we see the facts come out, we're going to see big tech censoring, right? What would have been accepted, right? They censored what would have been considered fact now. Good, Lou. I think you want to say something.
No, go ahead.
Okay, you're making. Were you just making kissy faces? You were like, ooh.
This is the part where I practice kissing. So.
The last 5 minutes of the show is always when he's works that in.
But look, Facebook, YouTube, Google, they all Twitter, they all said they're shutting down disinformation, right? They've overplayed their fucking hand because COVID was such a shifting target. And they didn't know enough that they're shutting down the flow of information. Same thing with the flow of information from political aspects, the New York Post story with Hunter Biden. Right. I think that we're going to see people waking up far more than continuing to be asleep. And I think that we're in for, actually, from our perspective, a lot more of a hopeful period over the next 5-10 years than you would imagine. I think people, people are morons, but I think they're not this stupid. And it's just become too apparent how blatant the manipulation of data information, how blatant the establishment and control from the top down has become, where people will start to say no more.
Well, yeah. It's strengthening the divide too, because there's a portion of the population that is exactly who Brian's talking about. They see through this. It's so obvious that it's sort of radicalizing them away from the mainstream narrative. Where at the same time you have basically the other half of the population who buys into it so strongly, and they think it's so obvious these are the correct narratives that it's really hard for me to see this ever being a quote unquote unified country in any way. And not that it ever really was. That's always been a bit of a myth, but I don't know. I don't have great hopes for national politics or anything like that, but I have a lot of hope for just individuals, what people can do on their own. I mean, I think the possibilities are limitless actually on that end.
I think that, I agree with you 100%. I think one of the great things to come out of the whole Trump presidency is that it was just sort of just letting people behind the curtain, just seeing just how these institutions cannot be trusted. And ultimately you have to trust in yourself, those you love, the people around you. And I think throughout all this stuff, I think the people who have remained sane, who have remained rational, and who have remained, have maintained their integrity, I think they're really going to rise to the top, and more people are going to see it. And I hope the Libertarian Party is party to that. And thank you guys for definitely being two of those peeps that I look to, and I hope more people will. Ladies and gentlemen, Marc, Clair, Brian McWilliams, Lions of Liberty, Electric Liberty Land. Please tune in to these fellas. They're doing great work. And if you're ever in Los Angeles, say hello.
Yeah, damn well right, man. Well, Lou, you need to book a trip to Los Angeles, my friend.
I really want to come. Right? Yeah, I would love to.
Come on out, man. You know what? Once this stuff opens up more,
Disneyland. They're opening up April 1st.
Well, let's see. Like we have enough of a following here, and we're connected with enough libertarians out here. We can put together a good show. You know, you could do some stand up or some sketches. I'll do some stand up. We'll enlist some other people. I think we can.
I'll dust off my old stand up routine for my.
Marc is actually not bad. I'm not gonna lie. But anyway, Lou already gave his sign off. We're just wasting time now. So thank you for having us on, man. This is awesome. I appreciate everything you're doing, brother. And I've always been a huge fan of everything that you have been doing. And your skits are amazing. So keep it up.
Same here, man. You've been killing it. So keep up the great work.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to support the show, please head over to thelouperez.locals.com and go ahead and support my sponsors. Black Organic Cold Brew, head over to www.blvckbrew.com and use the promo code LOU for free shipping. And if you head over to Paloma Verde, www.palomaverdestore.com and use the promo code LOU, you'll get 25% off purchases over $75. And if you sign up for email, you'll get an extra 10% off. All right, later.